Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast.
Let's talk about beer, Johnny. Let's talk about AVB. Let's talk about imperial stouts and imbibe buyouts of wicked weed. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about beer.
Hey Bubble fans, I know it's been an incredibly long time, but I am delighted, ecstatic to say that you are about to hear the voice of Rob.
Hello, we're back. We're back to the original format. I think a pandemic has got in the way a little bit. What happened?
What have you been doing for 5 months, Rob?
Oh, mate, I've been trying to sell beer in strange places, and yeah, that's me. Trying to sell beer in strange places, and
You've had 5 months to come up with an answer to that question, because that's what everyone asks. Like, hey, what have you been up to? And all you can say has been selling beer.
well, yeah, I think that has been a big part of it. We've been like a duck with legs kicking underwater, but seemingly very calm. As we've been at the Cave Direct trying to manage stock and help customers and manage breweries and everything that's involved with working with 50 plus breweries and having lots and lots of beer. But it's been going pretty well, and everyone is still drinking beer because, my God, they need it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said this when we did our COVID podcast a couple of months ago, but my drinking hasn't increased in volume, but it has in frequency.
Yes.
Less and more often is now my drinking habit.
It's funny as well. I've gone through some days or weeks, should I say, of like the experimental weeks of drinking one and done, and then other weeks I'll be like, no, I'm gonna stick to this one beer. I'm not gonna stray from it. I know it's not gonna do anything other than make me happy.
What beers have they been that you've stuck on?
What I've been really enjoying is Lervig Grapefruit No Worries, alcohol free. I bought a few slabs of that, and that's good for the Mondays and the Tuesdays. Just a really well made alcohol free beer. I wouldn't say there's mass amounts of them on the market, but this is a really good one, and I'm a sucker for grapefruit.
I can't believe there's a grapefruit variety already. They've gone that far down the road of low alcohol to produce a fruited version.
Yeah, and as we've alluded to in the past, it's such a good name that I'm just a sucker to drink it. I'm all about the brand.
It'll go down to in Australia as well. Like, they're just built for that market.
Although shipping a beer from Norway to Australia, I mean, that's going to be pricey. What have you been enjoying over lockdown?
Well, I mean, as most people from the bubble will know, the YouTube channel's been flying because everyone. Initially, we saw a drop in viewers because people were just addicted to 24-hour news, and then once the news became broadly the same, with Boris Johnson making a tit of himself and murdering more people, people started going to YouTube. So our homebrew content has flown, which is, little spoiler, why we started talking to Andy for this episode. And otherwise, yeah, writing lots of news and writing a book. I have another book deal.
Book number 3?
It's book number 4.
Book number 4?
Yeah, the incredible sales of the first 3 weren't enough to put publishers off. So I've managed to land myself another book deal all about seasonal drinking. So this weekend I went to Lost and Grounded's Oktoberfest. I've been to the Hop Harvest. I'm going to some green hop festivals. Yeah, lots of. I mean, people talk about seasonality and they think you're going to talk about matching beer with food, about drinking lager in the summer. But actually, the more you think about it, the more our habits do kind of change. Like, sure, we drink IPA all through the year, but at this time of year, I drink almost exclusively lager.
Yeah, I've been drinking a lot of lager, and actually, the name drop of Lost and Grounded, that has been a firm staple in my home over the last few months. It's just such a banger of a lager.
And the Oktoberfest they've done is really tasty as well. A lot drier than the sort of the native varieties of Oktoberfest beers, but still, yeah, caramel and really lovely sort of grassy floral hop aroma, and a kind of licoricey thing as well, like where the bitterness intermingles with the sweetness. It's a really nice beer.
Yeah, you're hard pushed to get a brewery in the UK who are doing lager as well. But yes, as you briefly alluded to, this week we have Andy from Elusive Brewing talking about homebrewing.
Absolutely, yeah. He's one of the big faces of homebrewing in the UK. He's not been doing it as long as I thought, as you'll find out. But yeah, he's one of the more influential guys. He's written a book on homebrewing, which was published by Camera. I'll put a link to that in the show notes because I can't remember the name of it. And yeah, he's a real sort of inspiration, I think, to both absolute amateurs, but also people who are starting to look at brewing seriously as a career. And that's why I chose him when we wanted to do a homebrew episode, because he's not only grown his homebrewing into a commercial business, but he's kind of kept the philosophies of homebrewing going during the first couple of years of Elusive being commercial.
Yeah, and I think as you discuss in that, it is how many brewers start. And in fact, my sort of experience of homebrewing was always with my old housemate or boatmate, shall I say, Pete Vick, who now works at the Garden Brewery, and he brewed at head brewer at Brick, and a few other really good breweries as well. He was always head brewer in our home breweries, and I played very much a second fiddle. But that's sort of my experience from it all. And he went on to be a really talented brewer and very experimental as well, which Andy talks about a lot on this. It seems to give people a real freedom to do what they want and not be constrained by the sort of having to sell 4.2% pale ales because it's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll probably get into that at the end of the podcast after Andy's had his say. But yeah, the reason we picked a homebrew episode this time round was because there has been a huge uptick in the interest in homebrewing during lockdown. Like Malt Miller, who sponsor lots of the videos on the Craft Beer channel and provide ingredients, they actually got to the point where they were so busy that they had to only open their online shop for an hour, and that would fill all of their orders for the day.
To me, it reminded me a lot of to name drop the fantastic Craft Beer channel video when you went to the Arctic Circle.
Thank you.
It was really fascinating for me to watch, but one thing I always thought was, does Norway and the Arctic Circle have a big homebrew scene? Because drinking is kind of a little bit underground. It's very expensive. It's not easy to do. You have to go to only pubs. So therefore, people, because they still wanted it, decided they would make it at home, and it's really enlightened this amazing homebrew culture. And when I was listening to you speaking to Andy and telling me about how it's grown so much in the last few months, has COVID played a part in lighting that fire in the UK?
I really hope it has, because I think, as you in America, homebrewing was made legal probably like 5 or 6 years before their craft beer revolution started to kick off in the early 80s. So there was definitely the rise of homebrewing in America definitely helped spur that revolution. And so it's very exciting to have the idea of a new generation of excitable, interested homebrewers, because in 5-10 years' time, that could result in a whole new load of innovation, or indeed a whole new load of New England IPA. You never know at this point. But having that thriving homebrewing industry is both great for it's a wonderful hobby. Like, I've really got into it since we've been doing it more on the craft beer channel. Absolutely addicted to it right now, and just researching stuff endlessly. So it's a wonderful hobby, great for mental health, great to keep you active, but it's also, could have a really profound impact on the commercial brewing industry. So many great ideas were had in homebrewing first, like barrel aging with bourbon barrels was done by homebrewers long before Goose Island started doing it with Bourbon County. So, it'd be really exciting if we get the same as perhaps Norway has in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes the lack of commercial experience can lead to these really bold things that maybe a trained brewer wouldn't dream of doing, but it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that's a good link to the to the podcast with Andy, because the reason I went down is to film him making a pumpkin spiced coffee beer. So it's talking of bad, uncommercial ideas. That's pretty near the top. So let's go to Andy and we talk a little bit about pumpkin beer. It's not the main part of the podcast because we're not that controversial here on the Bubble. But yeah, Andy's created this little space for himself as quite experimental, very varied, and slightly adventurous brewer. When actually a lot of breweries in the UK right now are playing it a bit safe, both because of COVID and because of drinkers' tastes. So yeah, this is Andy of Elusive Brewing, and we will see you on the other side.
Oh, I think it's got a yeast infection. Yeast infection.
So thanks for having me down on what must be an important day, the Pumpkin Brew Day.
Indeed, yeah. Looking forward to tasting this beer out of tank.
Yeah, I'm down here shooting for my new book and also shooting for the craft beer channel. We've got a homebrew recipe version of this beer coming. But tell me about your love of pumpkin beers and indeed beers that are slightly out the left field. You seem to revel in brewing stuff that's not popular.
Yeah, well, actually, as a home brewer, I used to kind of play around a lot with different flavors and brew lots of kind of fun and exciting experimental things. So yeah, it's I guess my love of pumpkin beer is slightly born out of that and playing around with spices and coffee and things like that. And having a lot of fun as a home brewer. I think when you're brewing at home, there aren't really any constraints. You can brew what the hell you like because you're not going to sell it. It's not a commercial thing. It's like, I'm going to brew something mad and I'll drink it, or I won't drink it. If it's rubbish, I'll pour it away, but you can just play around and have fun.
And what got you into homebrewing? What was that moment for you? I mean, for me, it was commercial. It was like, I want to make a video, but that's how I've ended up like really deep into it. Where did it come from for you?
I think for me, it was kind of a natural extension of learning about beer. I wanted to get to know the ingredients more. And at the time I was really getting into the American West Coast style IPAs, and wanted to have a pop at brewing one at home. And my first ever all grain recipe was a clone of Green Flash West Coast IPA, which is still one of my favorite beers. Beer that I'd drunk in the US, and I really want to drink more of this beer. So let's have a go at brewing some.
Well, when was that? What was happening in the UK scene? Was that kind of stuff available, or were you?
Yeah, so this would have been when I got into all grain brewing. It was 2012. So yeah, those beers were kind of starting to show up on these shores and as imports. I think that was probably a 2012. If you think like Siren Over the Road here started 2013, Weird Beer 2013, Pressure Drop 2013. That's around about the time when things started to boom here.
Yeah. So really, at that point, it was for West Coast style. It was Jaipur punk. Colonel, I guess, would have been a little way into their journey. Actually, by that
big
point.
Part of my discovery of all those single hops. They still do.
Yeah.
Or like 2 hops in a beer, and getting to learn those flavors and what each hop can bring. That was a big part of my kind of discovery of hops.
It's so fun. Like Colonel are a great way of sort of tracking the trends in beer, because you look back at all the single hop beers that they used to produce. You look at it'd be like Centennial, Cascade, all this kind of stuff, and now it's very, very different hops that are going on to that.
Indeed, yeah. I remember London murky merc shaming.
Yeah,
and now it's like this is normal.
It's not. It's clear shaming pretty much at this point. We're like, oh, it's a bit clear, isn't it?
It's a bit bright.
Yeah,
can't be very flavoursome.
Don't want to see my hand through that. So I have this theory which I developed when we went to what was an amazing homebrewing scene in the Arctic Circle. That's right, I travel. And I developed this theory. So we visited all these amazing homebrewers' houses, and they all had completely different homebrew setups. And I developed this kind of theory about trying to work out what a man or a woman were like by their homebrew setup. So what can you tell me about your homebrew setup? Were you one of those people who sort of started small and then sort of built like Jenga tower?
When I started all grain brewing, I had like the classic cool box mash tun.
Mm-hmm.
Like the kind of igloo with a tap in it.
Yeah.
And just a 20-litre like stock pot, basically. And what I would do is run the wort into one of the FVs, sparge, and then pour all of the wort into the kettle, which was a stock pot, on our kind of 4-ring electric hob. And it took about 3 hours to reach boil, and the whole hob was just like all the rings on.
Yeah.
And then once I kind of got bored of that, I bought a Pico, the electric the plastic bucket with an element in it thing, Electrum Pico, I think they're called. And that kind of took about 2 hours off my brew day because there's a lot quicker to get to the boil. And I used it as a hot liquor tank and also a kettle. So that, pretty simple. And I used to ferment in plastic buckets, nothing fancy. I didn't have a wort cooler. I used to just put the whole thing in the bath and just splash.
Fill the bath with ice water.
And just splash cold water around and like seal my FV up.
Yeah.
And basically, chill in the bath. So it would take 2 or 3 hours to reach.
I've got a glorious image of you like in your swimmies in there, playing with boats, cooling down your homebrew,
splashing around, and then it was pretty very basic actually. But it did the job. You don't need expensive equipment to brew good homebrew.
I think that's what sucks a lot of people in, because you think it's going to be incredibly difficult, and depending on the style, you can produce very good beer quite quickly with a good recipe and it's a tiny bit of experience, like by 3 or 4
I think
batches.
so. Yeah, I need to take a fairly seasonal approach to my homebrew. I'd brew like saisons in the summer and use yeast that didn't care about temperature, and then kind of autumn and spring was like brewing your kind of hoppy stuff where your room's an ambient. I didn't have any temperature control, so it's kind of an ambient 19, 20, and in winter generally didn't brew too much.
Well, I guess so you could possibly do a lager, but it probably still won't get cold enough for you to really lager it.
You used to brew the odd thing, but it kind of slow ferment. Use some kind of SO4, brew some dark beers. They would just chug away in 3 weeks in primary, and and then bottle condition stuff and wait until it was ready. But didn't. And then I did eventually invest in a fridge with a temperature control when I got a bit more serious about it. But initially, didn't do any of that.
So if you were doing that to sort of learn more about beer, you're intrigued by the process. What got you really addicted into it? Because obviously you probably learned fairly quickly about what all these things could do. What was keeping you?
I think the catalyst was the very first. So the first 2 batches we went in 2012. We got married and we went traveling before we got married. A lot of pre-honeymoon, whatever you call it. And the first batch I brewed. I bottled it the day before we went traveling. We went for about 3 months, and when I got back, we'd been to New Zealand, and I brought back some Nelson Sauvin. I did my second brew.
And had fun at customs going, nah.
Actually had a joke. We flew kind of east and kept going, so landed in the US. And they had these hops that I filled in my declaration form, and the guy just laughed at me. He's like, don't worry about it. What are you going to brew? So it's quite funny.
Right, so you got a home brewer on the...
at customs. So those first 2 beers, I entered into a competition, which was the London Amateur Brewers. They used to run they changed the name of it eventually, but it was called the Southeast Craft Brewing Competition, something like that. And I remember being at this place in Wimbledon. I can't remember where exactly. I think it was a cricket club. And we basically entered these 2 beers. And the first one was the West Coast IPA I mentioned, and that won a bronze medal. And I got this photo of me with this really happy face with my bronze medal. And because it was the first category called out, and I was bronze. I was the first name called out, and I couldn't quite believe it. I kind of got my little medal, and that was like, actually, that was all right, that beer. People have enjoyed it, and that's what spurred me on. It's like brewing something at home that not only people enjoy drinking, but it's won a little award. That really spurred me on, and I joined the club, London Amateur Brewers, soon after that. And I used to go down there with Greg Irwin and Brian Spooner, who founded Weirdbeard a year after that, and just kind of it really lit a fire under me. And at that point, I wanted to brew everything. It's like, oh, I want to brew a rank beer. I want to brew a black cardamom saison. Don't ever do that. And I just wanted to explore all of the styles and all of the ingredients, and just it was really, I remember every Sunday I was almost brewing every week, and couldn't drink all the beer. We'd give it away. We'd swap it. But it was a real, really exciting hobby.
I think there's a lot of people. I get asked this question quite a bit through the craft beer channel. People are like, "Would you ever want to set up a brewery?" And my response is no. I've seen how fucking hard that is. And also, I've done one good New England IPA and one good bitter. Everything else is like I've drunk it and gone, that's not seriously flawed. It's not infected, but it's just not a very good beer. But I think that many homebrewers, they just love that complete flexibility, whereas they know if they went commercial, it would be harder to have those experiments that go wrong. You might be able to do lots of different styles, but you've got to sort of nail it. But you, despite loving all of that, eventually did set up your own brewery. I guess by the point that you started looking at setting up a brewery, what were you brewing mostly then? Were you still all over the place, or had you dialed in some specific
I was
recipes?
a little bit all over the place, but I'd never, before starting Elusive, I didn't brew many pale ales and that sort of thing. Did a couple of IPAs. So I was, mostly still, I guess that journey from homebrewer to commercial was all about our American Red and it winning the Craft Beer Co competition. And then that was brewed at Dark Star. So that was the one beer that I had to hang my hat on. Mm-hmm. That and I talked about the Saison with Nelson hops that I brewed that ended up being a commercial beer at Weirdbeard as part of their single hop series, and then became Lord Nelson. So those are the two that we had. And the rest we kind of had a bit of a gap. When I left my job, we were messing around with premises. Everybody is. It took longer to get in than we thought it would. So I had a bit of time at home where I was just brewing prototypes, pilot batches, and trying to develop a core range for Elusive. And we kind of settled on like an English pale ale. We launched with a smoked ruby mild, which is
you went commercial, Andy.
Yeah, that was a tough lesson because I remember a landlord ringing me up, going, "This is a nice beer, Andy, but people are having a half, and then that's it. It's like, and they're enjoying it, but it's not like something you drink for a session, and for a mild, like you want to drink a few pints of it."
It's a classic like beer for the table. Like, I'll get one, and we can all have a try.
Yeah,
and then go back to the pints we were having.
Exactly. So we kind of that was a beer called Cherrywood Road. We launched with that one, and an English pale ale called Starship Fleet. But that kind of evolved over time quite quickly, actually. So we ended up with a session IPA, a pale ale, and an American Red. So that we kind of settled on that as our core range, and we've since added in the coffee porter and the black IPA, which are I call them. They're part of our main lineup, but they're kind of they're kind of seasonal or occasional. They're available throughout the year, but they're not big shifters, so we don't brew them constantly.
It feels like you've taken quite an old school approach to commercializing what you're doing, and that you have kept brewing lots of different styles like that. Whereas I think the UK generally has really whittled down the styles that breweries are making. And what I love is when I go to the States, and they've kind of done the same, but every now and then you'll go into a smaller town perhaps where there'll be a brewery, probably a brew pub, that still you go in and there's 20 taps and there's 20 different styles on.
Yeah.
Which you just don't really see anymore. So it's really refreshing to see, like, you're not the only guy, but like Elusive definitely in my head are constantly having that sort of homebrew.
Yeah, I think so. I've been over to the US a fair amount, and I love Jeff Bagby, Oceanside, California, because he's got 20 different styles all brewed in-house on tap, and it just experiments all the time. And that's I guess we do. I mean, even our core range, we like level up, overdrive our American pale. We change the hops each time, and that was a little bit born out of necessity when we started, and we couldn't get Citra, Simcoe. So I managed to scrounge a little bit from different breweries, but I had to change things up a lot.
I drove over to the Sonic Drive-In, ordered a jalapeno burger, washed it down with beers, beer, beers, 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 beer, beers, beers, beer, beer, beers, beers, beer, beers, beers, beer. I said, Stone Cold, why have one when you can have them both?
So let's rewind for a second and just go back to the thing that really tipped you over the edge, which was winning the Craft Beer Co. homebrew competition. Was that the red ale that you entered?
It was, yeah. It was an American red ale with Citra and Simcoe, 5.8%.
Mm-hmm. And well, I've got loads of questions coming off this. But I guess the first one would be, so one of the prizes was £5,000. Was that put straight into the idea of a brewery, or was that?
It
was
was quite funny because I won that. I remember the prize giving, I think, was January, February, and Jay, my wife, was on holiday with her mum, so I couldn't ring her. So I won this amazing prize, and I need to ring someone and tell them. So I went outside and I rang my mum. I was like, Mum, I won the competition. She's like, what competition? Oh, the homebrew competition. I didn't know you homebrewed. Talk to your parents more. And she said, well, what have you won? I said, well, I've won £5,000 and I'm going to brew my beer with Dark Star. And she was like, oh, that's amazing. What are you going to do with the money? And I was like, I'm going to open a brewery. I was a bit tipsy at this point. And actually, she reminds me of that. But that money, the £5,000, became the deposit on the kit. Right. So we gave it straight to Elite Stainless, who built our kit down in Swindon. And so it did lead to the brewery.
Did you have that in your head already? Like, if you hadn't have won, do you think Elusive would have happened?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think it gave me a bit more confidence and a bit more self-belief. But I still kind of knew that, this is a lot of hard work, and obviously that $5,000 didn't go. It was a drop in the ocean.
Yeah.
So we had to raise the money to start the business, and I think maybe it still took a while, because that was 2014, and we didn't start brewing until May 2016.
Right.
So it still took a while, but I think that was it was a catalyst. And would we have got there without that? Maybe. Don't know.
But I mean, it would have certainly been delayed, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
You wouldn't have had that sort of kick out the arse. What about the brew day at Dark Star? Was that a moment where you're like, yeah, I want to do this? Or was that like this is different?
That was quite funny. So Andy was the head brewer at Dark Star at the time. Now works at Lallemand.
Yeah.
So he was. We spoke on the night of that because he was there as a part of the prize giving, and he was basically, I will send you an email and we'll sort out a brew day. So eventually got an email and he was like, well, do you want to? We brew 8,800 litres. Brew length, so do you want to have a go at scaling recipe up? So I use beer tools and I fired it up.
Go to Excel times 10,000.
Exactly. I toggled the brew length from. It's got a little tool that scales it up, and I sent him it, and it's got this low.
I could have done that. He's probably his response.
It's like, yeah, that ain't going to fit in our mash tun. And by the way, our mash efficiency is like 92%. We're like, and that's like what hop extraction is way more than that. You don't need like 20 kilos of bitter in hop, and it was all it was quite a funny discussion, but it eventually helped me kind of get the recipe to where it needed to be, and then they pilot brewed it.
Because I think people kind of forget that when we talk about scaling up recipes, whether you're a home brewer doing a bigger batch or whether you're a commercial brewer going to a new kit, like scaling it up, completely different efficiencies, completely different kits that mean that recipes. Yeah, I always laugh when people go like, gamma rays changed. You're like, well, of course it has. It's been on 3 different kits with entirely different systems. Like, these beers have to change. And that just hammers it home. Like, your idea of what that beer would look like couldn't even fit in there.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't fit in a mash tun. But yeah, they did pilot brew it because obviously it's a big commitment for them as well. It was their monthly. They do a monthly special. So it was their monthly special for them. I think it was November. It came out eventually. So November 2016, 2014. Sorry. And so they pilot brewed it, put it out in a couple of pubs, and yeah, and they liked it and scaled it up.
Do you think? I guess Andy must have been there at that award, slightly nervous because that's a vaguely small. It's a small commercial risk, but they must be like, "Come on, something we can sell." Like,
yeah,
a red ale, they're probably like,
did.
"Yeah, I'll take that."
So the year after, they Craft Beer Co ran that competition twice, and the year after, it was I got involved in the judging. They asked me to come down and judge, and the beer that won it was a Brett Pale Ale, kind of with a huge nod to Orval. It was delicious, but I don't know if it ever materialised.
Yeah, I mean, breweries might be like, I'm not putting Brett through my fermenters because that's more trouble than it's worth, I guess.
Yeah, but I don't know if the commitment was to brew the winning beer. No, actually, I think it was. But yeah, it was. I don't think that one. Maybe they brewed a different beer with the winner.
Yeah, sort of agreed.
But I think the red ale. Yeah, I mean, it's particularly as a monthly special in winter, autumn. It's commercially viable
Probably
for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So you said that it wasn't necessarily the reason that you started Elusive, but it was definitely a sort of a straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. There aren't really many homebrew competitions happening now. I mean, we just had one with Lanneman, which we covered, and you're using the yeast that's in it. But do you think that there's enough sort of impetus for homebrewers to start going pro? And do you think we need more homebrewers going pro?
Yeah, good question. I think I get, because of that story and it being, I guess, well known in homebrewing circles, I do get a lot of people approach me. So, well, have you got any advice? I've got, I brew this nice beer. Can I go pro with it? And I always kind of say to them that do your homework on commercial viability, of course, but also on running a business. And I don't want to put people off, but scaling up your recipe, making. We brew 800 litres here at a time of that beer you brewed at home. That's quite easy compared to running a business. So I always say that I think there still is an impetus, and we do need more homebrewers going pro, because they're some of the most passionate people you could ever meet about beer, and beer needs that passion.
Yeah, and clearly the most sort of willing to be diverse as well. I think
absolutely.
The drinker is
experimental view, but of course, the market compared to when we started in 2016 is now a lot different. So if I look back to when I started homebrewing in 2012, and I talked about Sour and Weirbeard Pressure Drop starting in 2013.
Yeah, it's probably just shy of 1,000
it was
breweries at that point.
Different scene back then, and arguably a lot easier to establish yourself than it is today.
So I guess you're saying we do need them, but probably be careful if you are.
But
one of those
do your homework, and make sure you've got a market for it. Get out there and talk to your local publicans and your bottle shops, and take them samples, and create that market before you create the beer. Don't just kind of rock up, spend loads of money on kit, and go, "Hey, we're here, buy our beer."
Yeah, I mean, you see that I think a lot in the craft beer industry, because there's so many people who are incredibly passionate. They miss that commercial element. Like, they need to know, I want to open a bottle shop. I'll open it in the town where I live. You're like, well, maybe there's not the interest, or maybe there's a huge free trade. Number of free trade pubs, so beer is actually really well distributed in that area or something. And I guess with breweries we need to remember that too at this point, particularly with COVID. I mean, the answer might have been different if it hadn't been for COVID, because right now it's incredibly tough. You'd have to small pack everything, which is not the easiest thing to do as a small brewery. So yeah, brutal time to ask that question.
I mean, this climate especially, we've had a pretty transitional year here, and with a lot of breweries, a lot of businesses have, a lot of people in their jobs, It's been a tough year, but that swing to small pack, and for us it's been moving to canning, and that's just keeping an eye on commercial viability. We've since March, since lockdown, we've established a direct to consumer kind of thing that we just didn't have before. I think homebrewers that are going to go pro need to have some commercial nous and need to really know the market and get to know the market that they're going to be selling into. And
something that I've learned by really getting into homebrewing in the last sort of year is you have to also kind of have a passion for packaging itself as well. Like, pretty much all the bad beers that I've made, I haven't really analysed them before, like the beers 2 or 3 years ago, but most of them would have been packaging errors. You do a certain mash recipe enough times, you can really nail that down. But in terms of like oxidation once it goes into bottle, in terms of like we were discussing earlier about how my New England IPA probably lost some aroma because I overcarbed it, had to vent, and obviously all that gorgeous smell that comes out with the CO2.
Yeah,
that's aroma.
that's
aroma.
aroma. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do feel for. I mean, New England IPA has been the downfall of lots of home brewers for sure. Like I couldn't brew any kind of faithful, replica of those sort of beers at home on my old kit with my plastic buckets and my little bottling wand that I just plug into the FV and fill up, stir a bit of sugar in. You can't do that on New England IPA. So I do feel for homebrewers that are brewing those styles and want to really nail them, because you're now talking about conical FVs that are pressure rated with a closed transfer. It's an investment you need to make. In forced carbonation, and it's all that kind of. It's really changed things up for homebrewers. But you can now buy that kit. Back in 2012, there might have been some SS Brewtech stuff back then, or that maybe it came out around then. But look at what you can buy now. It's astonishing. I've seen homebrewers that have got better quality kit than we've got here at Elusive, and I'm really jealous. I'm like, wow, look at that. I think the kit has kind of evolved. And now you can get commercial grade kit for homebrewing.
But it is, I mean, what's also been amazing is to see, shout out to some great YouTubers who do it, like David Heath, who when we were doing the New England IPA video, I learned a lot from him and the processes that he's come up with. And I've learned a lot by talking to people like you. Even like we went to Trogs, like I think they're like the 18th biggest brewery in America. But when we went there, we met the Trogs brothers, and they told us about what they call the 3 bucket rule, where they pretty much always have 3 hops in their beers, and they use one as a baseline, one to fill in those gaps, and the other one to add some top notes. And that taught me why. So the last beer I brewed before I started getting back into it again was a Christmas beer. So I used to try and brew a beer every Christmas for my family, and one year it was just as the New England craze was happening. It was 2015, 2016, and I did a single hop Azaka New England Pale, and it was the flabbiest fucking thing I've ever put in my mouth. And not only was it oxidized, but just Azaka is you can't single hop with Azaka. There's no crisp bitterness, there's no real citric quality. It's just pure like sweet, kind of mango-y, almost like diacetyl levels of sticky sweetness to that hop. And I abandoned homebrewing pretty much for 2 years after that. And I got back into it 2 Christmases ago. I made a coffee porter for Christmas, which was much more suitable to the season as well.
There's a lot more places to hide in a coffee porter. I always say to people, like, start with a dark beer, because it's very forgiving on oxidation. It's generally, if you're down south, at least, don't need to touch the water. Just crack on with it. Keep things simple. I mean, New England is it's the undoing of a lot of homebrewers.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to know. I mean, it's a super cynical question, but after the years that you spent, so 4 years homebrewing at home, what were sort of the absolute key things that you learned in that process?
Absolutely, like sanitation.
Come on, tell me your infection horror stories. How many did you have?
Actually, not too many that got infected. I poured a few away for sure, like the odd pellicle forming here and there. But I think I learned that pretty quickly, and that was what I picked up from going to the homebrew club and watching YouTube videos like you did, and just kind of sanitation is absolutely the main thing. I used to be really rigorous. Kettles of boiling water throughout everything. I used to even sanitize the kettle before boil, sanitize everything, sanitize the FV twice.
I guess you get more and more cocky as you go.
Yeah, I think. I guess if you can't over sanitize, right? Unless you're using something with chlorine in it, if you made that mistake. Then sanitation is the main thing, like hygiene, and also
it's the pipes as well. Like I've had multiple infections because I tried to make a supermarket beer where we were using bread yeast and it just didn't kick off in time. Yeah. But the infections that I have had, I think it's always been the pipe. Like the piping is what I've always learned. You think it's only in there for a second, but that's enough when it's going in.
Yeah, and definitely, like, you're pumping through your wort. If you've got a wort chiller, make sure that's nice and clean, or get it in at the end of boil. I think probably I would say the bulk of homebrew gets spoiled at packaging. Yeah. So once you pitch that wort, once you're down at pitching temperature, you've sealed that FE, you've got your yeast in. From that point on, everything's super, super critical, like in terms of hygiene and things like I used to bottle condition. So I would normally transfer to. I would siphon off to a bottling bucket. Siphon, great point of infection. I would then boil some water and stir some sugar in, and then add that in the bottling bucket, and that's another point of infection. Bottles themselves, I was cleaning them, reusing them.
So a lot of homebrewers on forums will say, like, "Oh, you don't need to worry at that point because it's got a level of alcohol." But that level of alcohol is quite high.
Yeah.
I think it's like 7 or 8%. At which point you're pretty much safe.
Yeah, I think, I wasn't brewing too many strong beers. I think a lot of them do get spoiled at that point, particularly with oxidation or with some kind of weird infection where you've not sanitized the spoon you stir your sugar with, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's don't be complacent around hygiene at any point during the brew.
And we were talking earlier about how when we talk about oxidation, usually it's in a commercial brewery and it's usually pretty pronounced because by the time you get hold of that beer, it might be 6, 8 weeks old or even older, and you taste that oxidation and it's marmalade-y, cardboardy, dusty. But actually, oxidation, particularly with very hoppy beers, can be, the oxidation can be very, very slight, but it stops what would have been a fantastic beer. Just brings it down 10-20%.
It just mutes everything. And I mean, I didn't worry about oxidation too much as a homebrew. I don't remember being... I read homebrew forums these days, and it's the only thing they're talking about. And that's because they're brewing these hazy pale ales, and there's nowhere to hide. But I didn't worry about it too much back then. But I guess what was happening was the beer would be great at packaging, and then once it's conditioned in the bottle, it's like, oh, this is quite nice. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, it's all muted and mellowed and maybe cardboardy and a bit weird. But then I wasn't really brewing too many mega hoppy beers. I did dabble with a couple of dippers and black IPA,
of course. But
they weren't like these days. Homebrewers are like they're following the lead of commercial breweries that are putting 20 grams a litre in. We never did anything like that. As a homebrewer, I would pretty much brew 19 litre batches, and the most dry hop I ever went in was 100 grams because that's what the packet was. So I put all those in. So I wasn't really going too mad with the hops.
I mean, well, it depends on the style, but it's still quite a lot of hops. But
Yeah,
I think we
amount.
added, I think it's about 350 grams to the New England IPA we did recently, which is when you're adding it to what's quite a small bucket, and you start to go, have I done my maths right? Because that
it feels like
is
a lot.
lot of hop.
And also, I mean, that's probably if that's kind of Galaxy, Nelson, some of the sexy hops, that's probably 25 quid's worth of hop. That's gone in. It's I do feel bad when I see that on these homebrew forums and these kind of brown-looking New England IPAs and like, oh, what happened? I don't think I'd ever brew those styles at home unless I had the right equipment to do it. So
well, I mean, that's why. So when I was talking about, said something about a home brewer, like what their kit looks like. My kit is proper like Jenga style, like, oh, and then I need this, and then I'm going to need this, and this. Yeah, so I've got a hacked homebrew fridge. I've got different size, different shape fermenters. I've got endless piping that attaches to endless different things so that I can bubble CO2 up and all this kind of stuff. And I'm quite a chaotic homebrewer, which is another reason why when people say, maybe you should start a brewery, I'm like, I don't think I've got the mind for that. Be the most inefficient brewery ever to have existed.
I think homebrewers. I think homebrewers are another reason they can make good commercial brewers is they have that kind of willingness to hack around and they can knock something up if they need to achieve a job in the brewery. Quite resourceful, I'd say.
Yeah. So that was going to be my next question: is what have you learned from commercial brewing that maybe you could help a home brewer out with? What kind of knowledge have you picked up?
I think so it's all that fine tuning, water treatment and things like that. I mean, when I didn't used to do too much water treatment when I was a home brewer, but I used to not brew too many pale and hoppy beers. So the water down in Hampshire, where I live, is quite hard, good for dark beers. Used to tweak a little bit of acidification for pale beers, but maybe a little bit of calcium chloride. But yeah, we didn't give it too much thought. But I've learned, like as a commercial brewer, that these little things, particularly now we are brewing these hazy style beers, a little fine tuning can go a long way between creating a decent beer and something that's really good, and having that kind of it's okay or it's really good is a very small it's like a little fine tuning,
particularly on a homebrew scale where like when you're weighing out your calcium chloride and it's 3 grams and you're like, this can't
half a teaspoon it can make all the difference for sure. So things like that. I think also learning about consistency. As a homebrewer, I didn't really care. didn't give a shit if the next batch was 1% stronger or whatever. So being able to, we tend to brew slightly over gravity, so that if we get a bit of a, the mash isn't as efficient for whatever reason, a bit of variation in ingredients between batches that we can tweak and adjust, so we're always hitting the gravity we want to hit, particularly in our core beers. So having that skill set of being able to hit your numbers consistently is something that I've learned as a commercial brewer.
And I guess you should always overshoot, because you can either liquor back or just go, you know what, an IPA at 7 instead of 6.5.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unless you've got loads of sugar or DME on hand, you can't add gravity. So we tend to go slightly over and then bring it down. We just always liquor back a small amount. It's just that amount that we vary to hit the gravity.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lesson I learned with the New England IPA. Like, we tweaked the recipe once we knew it had worked. We tweaked it a little bit to make sure that it was easier to repeat at home. And one of those things was we just upped that grain bill by about 10%, because we'd struggled a bit with the efficiency of that mash. And if anybody else did, with the amount of hops that are going in, if it's only a 5% beer, that's not going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say not going to be balanced. New England IPAs aren't balanced. That's not what they're about. But it's going to be really astringent and not the soft, juicy thing that you're sort of looking for. Go back to where I started the interview, which is about you and your more idiosyncratic styles. I'd love to hear what it is you love about Black IPA, which I think must be one of the most, along with pumpkin beers, which you're brewing today, probably one of the most maligned styles. So the first question, which is, I remember when I got onto beer Twitter, when we started the Craft Beer channel, like 2013, 2014, one of the biggest questions was, like, what is a Black IPA? Because some people would say, like, oh, it's an IPA, but it's got a very small amount of roasted character and it's jet black. And then other people are like, no, it's a complex malt bill. We're trying to bring something extra out. What is your approach to a Black IPA?
I could probably talk about this for hours. My
We've
approach,
got time.
my approach for it. I'll try not to talk about it for hours. We were talking a bit earlier about like black. One of my favourite Black IPAs is Wookie Jack Firestone Walker, which is a black rye IPA, and it's got some roast to it. It's got that kind of toastiness, spiciness from the rye, and all that hop, of course. I think the first ever Black IPA I tried was Colonel's, and I think, to answer your question in maybe a couple of different ways, why do I like them so much? That is a little bit. We talk about beer being about experiences, and when that beer launched, it was at the Rake Bar. And it was in January, I want to say 2011. And we'd been to buy my wife Jane's engagement ring at Hatton Garden on a Sunday. And it turned out being a bit cheaper than I thought it would be. So I was in a good mood. And
let's go spend £9 on some pints.
Yeah, exactly. So we went to, and I knew about this beer launching at the Rake because I'd seen it on Twitter. Glyn Roberts, Rabid Barfly, had joined Colonel, and they were tweeting about this beer. I'm like, I want to go and try that. So we went down to the Rake and sat there and got merrily sozzled on Black IPA all afternoon. So, and that was obviously a very happy day for us. We just got an engagement ring, and maybe it was that memory of that day that is why I kind of always love that style.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that kind of experiential reason why I like Black IPA. But also I do like drinking them even now. So I think for me, a Black IPA needs to have a little bit of roast to it, because there's no point just painting it black, painting IPA black, and just having it something that is visually
it's
black, but isn't
like glitter beer. It's
yeah,
just like, sure, but
there's no roast character at all. So for me, you need a little bit of roast. But I've since learned that water is really important for a black IPA, because if you go, and this was the thing, like back when these things were popular, 2011, 12, a lot of people were just brewing an IPA and just pouring a bag of Crawford 3 on the sparge, and that was it. And they turned out being like astringent, super racy, because you kind of steered your water towards back then, you were trying to boost that bitterness. So everyone's, going the sulfate going up, and it's like, well, that generally gave you a really roasty result, even though, I'm just adding Crawford 3, I'm just painting it black. You weren't. You actually introduced a lot of roast. So we found out that you need to move your water more towards, actually, if you're brewing New England styles, that's not a bad profile. So a bit softer, a bit more chloride. I think water is important for a black IPA. And I think for me, my favourites are probably, I've got a little bit of roast, but they're not like astringently bitter, like a stout might be. So there's a little bit of roast and then loads of the right kind of hops, that kind of citrusy.
Is it a bit more of a porter-y kind of malt bill?
I mean, the recipe for Shadow of the Beast, our black IPA, is on our website. So that uses some dark crystal and some midnight wheat, or roasted wheat in the mash.
Sexy name malt, that one.
Yeah, midnight wheat, a British malt. And then we spar through a little bit of chocolate to just hold the colour. So when we run off Shadow of the Beast, it's kind of a mahogany colour. But if we didn't add that little bit on top, it would slowly drop in colour as we sparged.
So you're just adding that chocolate malt right at the end of the mash, just
so that's so it's already got colour and it's already got the roasty flavour, and then we're just using we're just holding the colour. It could be any dark malt that we use. We use chocolate because we always have it on hand here. So yeah, we're just sparge through that, and that holds the colour through the sparge. But it's not the only. Whereas taking a pale ale or an IPA and just splashing a bag of Crathry on top, you'll get a black beer, but I don't think it's quite enough to really hit the style for me.
Mm-hmm. So, final question: Do you ever miss that freedom of home brewing, of not having to worry about consistency, of not having to worry about drinking it, of being able to dump a batch? Or, I mean, I get you must have done batches commercially anyway, but it's just
we have. I mean, we've dumped 3 or 4 here, and we're about to brew our 300, so 1%. Or 99% success rate.
There you go. Yeah, take that.
But we dump them for different reasons. So, do I miss that ability to experiment? Not really, because we do. I mean, we're here brewing a pumpkin beer.
As soon as I asked that question, I was suddenly conscious of the pumpkin spice, the cinnamon that's on the table next to us.
I think the first thing we talked about at the start is that we're quite small here, so we have that flexibility to brew what we want. And we've not got 10,000 litres of something wacky to sell. So the advantage of being small helps us a lot. So I don't really miss it, because I do still. Although we've got a set of core beers, we've got a very loose schedule here, and we can adapt and brew. We're brewing on Thursday. I don't know what we're brewing yet.
Right. Wow. Okay.
So I'll have a think, and we'll look at what we've got on hand, and we'll brew something. So it's still, and I'll ring up the malt mill and go, "Have you got? Can you send me some of this?" We do still have a very experimental and unconstrained approach to what we do.
And is that the business plan go forward? Do you want to stay that size where you can keep experimenting?
I said when we started Elusive, I never ever want it to be a big brewery. I'll be happy if we get to the point we're kind of 3 or 4 people selling a lot of beer from our tap room here, and kind of a lot of people come down and see us. And yeah, I think that's where we want to get with the business. So we never want to be a big brewery. So I don't think we'll ever lose that flexibility and that agility to brew what we want to brew and have a bit of fun.
I love that stuff. Been drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. Drinking it for years. I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it. Hops to it. I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it. Hops to it.
So that was Andy from Elusive, sort of ending on the points we made at the very beginning, that there's no constraints really in homebrewing, and you can do whatever the hell you want.
And that's why a lot of homebrew sucks. But the absolute joy of it. I'm talking about myself there, not other homebrewers. But yeah, what was really interesting about Andy, and what I'd kind of known going into it, but really was hammered home by the chat with him, was the fact that he has kept that very almost kind of childlike wonder when it comes to the production of beer in his commercial business. And so he's always clearly been very willing to take risks and produce stuff that might not sell particularly well, that might challenge the palates, that will definitely challenge him and his one employee. And he's kept that homebrew approach of not worrying too much about the commerciality, partly because he knows he can sell it because he's very small, but partly because he just wants to have fun with it, I think. Yeah,
I mean, every brewery starts out with something different in mind, and some people want to take over, and some people have taken over, but Andy very clearly doesn't want that. He wants to run a business that he's passionate about, that he can do whatever he wants, and he isn't too constrained by people's drinking habits and the worry of flogging all the beer he's made. He knows that if he is that, how many hectoliters did he say produced? Like three,
around 800, I think.
Oh, is it? Yeah. But what he didn't want to, or sorry, how big did he say he would like to get it to?
Oh, I think he was hoping to be around 2,000.
Yeah, 2,000. You know, like that is relatively small, and you aren't constrained when you're at 2,000 to having to shift vast quantities of beer. And we've all seen it with breweries that have got to that next stage, and you know, we talk about Beavertown a lot on here because they're a good example of a brewery that's taken over. But when they started out, Black Betty, Black IPA, which you talk about with Andy, that was their main beer. That was one of their first beers. And then it got ditched because it's not really in every drinker's resume, I suppose. And okay, it's easy to sell a couple of 100 kegs of it, but try selling a couple of thousand of Black IPA. It's not easy.
Yeah, it does. It feels a lot like the UK craft beer industry sort of, and Andy will appreciate this because his branding is all about computer games. Sort of skip to boss level. They didn't have, like America did, like 20 years of these amateur brewers and home brewers suddenly being head brewers at brew pubs all over the country and just making wild stuff that was exactly what they wanted to make, exactly what they wanted to experiment with. Because in the UK, it got so commercial so quickly that a lot of breweries, ditched their original ideas that made them unique and started going down the road that would actually really sell. And, it's countless the amount of breweries that came out like all guns blazing with one approach and very quickly changed. Like we talked about Black Betty, but also Neck Oil by Beavertown. That was the best bitter when it was first brewed. Nobody liked it. He changed it to a session IPA. You look at Cloudwater, their whole thing was seasonal brewing. They were going to have 4 ranges a year for each of the seasons, and they were producing Hopfenweissens and best bitters and all this stuff for different seasons. And lo and behold, they actually ended up instigating the New England brewing revolution in the UK and just throwing seasonality kind of out of the window.
Yeah.
So the fact that Andy, and there are other brewers doing it, sort of holding on to that great sort of brew pub experimental tradition that was in America and in the homebrewing scene all over the world is, I think, incredibly important to the personality and individualism of British brewing.
Definitely. It's kind of like when in music and someone releases their first album and it's written over many years without big label interference, and it sounds amazing, and then the second one comes out and you're like, what happened? And it's because the record execs got involved and told them what to do. And in many ways that's sort of what happens in beer, but only it's the public, it's us that sort of tells them what to do by our drinking habits. And quite often we tell them it needs to be accessible, it needs to be reasonably priced, and we need to drink it by volume really in the UK, because we are sort of a volume drinking nation. And that's what we then see with a lot of the breweries that move to that next stage that are doing 6,000, 10,000 hex. They have these core products that are average ABVs, usually a pale ale, maybe a lager if you're ballsy, and that's sort of what's dictated it. But people that have that passion, that homebrew passion, really can do whatever the fuck they want, and that's what Andy has done, and he'll continue, I'm sure, to push boundaries.
Yeah, I don't think he's, even when he gets to 2,000 hect, like that's a very different business to an 800 hect brewery, but he's still going to have lots of flexibility. And particularly, you can plan for that. He could grow to 2,000 hectolitres, but keep his actual batch sizes relatively small, so nothing is too big a risk, rather than, having a couple of fermenters that are twice the size. So I really hope he stays down that road and keeps experimenting, because I've absolutely loved most of the stuff that he makes, but my favourites are the slightly outlandish ones. Not even that outlandish, like Plan B, which is his Belgian Pale Ale, is amazing. And I can't think of many breweries that are making Belgian Pale Ales outside of him and
Burning Sky.
Donzoco have got one, I think.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. But, that one of my favourite styles of brewing, like the Delasenne style Pale Ale, and not many people in the UK produce.
No, I know. I mean, Belgian beer has fallen out of trend somewhat, but very few people got into beer via a different avenue than Belgian beer, so it really holds a soft spot in many people's hearts. And I think more and more people should experiment with those Belgian yeast strains, because it's sort of why we're all here.
I've had this discussion quite a lot recently around how, lots of people are sort of slagging off New England IPA. They're bored of it, particularly people that never really enjoyed it. Sort of, I always try to explain to them that while they may not like this moment in time, what it's done is it's made yeast a hero again.
Yeah.
Because so much of that flavour comes from the yeast, and I'm really hoping that that's going to result in maybe Belgian yeast suddenly being really exciting to people, and those Belgian flavours, or maybe it's Hefeweizen yeast being really exciting, or whether it's fake yeast that we're all talking about now that can produce a New England IPA in about 4 days. That's never really been the case before. It's always been about the hops in the craft beer movement, and on the craft beer channel, if I'm honest. So yeah, that's an exciting change that's happening, and brewers like Andy are going to be the breweries we can look to try all these different new exciting stuff first, and then it will get commercialized and get huge.
And do you think COVID has sort of reignited homebrewing in the UK because of either boredom or just an inability to go to the pub?
Do you know what I think? Definitely homebrewing has had a spike because of COVID, because of the inability to go to the pub. But I think it's been part of a trend that's been happening for a long time in UK culture. I don't know about around the rest of the world, which is trying to find, simple, wholesome activities to do that involve a bit less spending, that involve, maybe a little bit more quality time with family or friends, and is a bit more experiential. Like, we talk about craft beer, drinking craft beer, going to breweries being experiential. There's nothing more experiential than handling the malt, handling the hops, waiting for a month, understanding the recipes, and finally trying something that you produced. And I think it's accelerated a trend. I feel like homebrewing was already growing, and COVID's really helped with that. And that's why we're pivoting the craft beer channel towards that a little bit, because I think that's what increasingly beer geeks are going to want to be involved in, at least on a superficial level, just hearing the stories. Like, we've had over 100,000 views just on our 2 homebrew videos in the last month and a bit. There's not 100,000 people out there making those beers. 99,000 of those people are just watching because they're fascinated by the whole process.
Yeah, definitely. And we have noticed, as you said, the sort of stereotype of COVID as being making sourdough bread. And just sort of a look towards creativity at home, because you don't want to watch the news anymore. And obviously some people have found YouTube, but for many people they have looked towards sort of a creative outlet, be it baking or making their own beer. So may it continue.
Absolutely. Although if that makes you selling actual beer harder, then we need to all stop it. Distros have had a rough old fucking time.
Yeah. We sure have.
But at least most homebrew ends up down the drain anyway. Like, I even had to tip away in the end some of my New England IPA because I was like, I'm not having friends over. I've already drunk 18 litres of this. I just don't think I can justify the final 2. So I bottled a couple of them and got rid of the rest.
I mean,
because I've also got beer fridges full.
Pretty commendable. So well done.
When you work full time in the craft beer industry, sometimes you've just got to say no. Silence from Rob. He's never said no in his life.
No, it's not the Irish way, Johnny.
So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Andy. Elusive have a web store, so you can go try their beers. You can try the pumpkin beer that he was brewing on the day that I was there, and indeed soon you'll be able to see the video of me homebrewing that, because that's a video that's coming up closer to Halloween. Don't forget, you probably already know this, but we do now have a weekly podcast that I do with Brad called Friday 5 p.m. We'll be discussing this episode on the next Friday 5 p.m. So if you've got any questions, do send them in. But otherwise, yeah, we'll see you on Wednesdays for the videos, Fridays for the Friday 5 p.m.s, and we've got in the bag, no, not in the bag yet, near the bag, the next episode of The Bubble that will be out in October.
So I will be back sooner rather than the sort of last pause since last April, was it? So yeah, we'll be a bit more frequent.
Crash cut to 6 months' time.
Yeah.
Welcome back. The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer channel. Head to youtube.com/the Craft Beer channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craftbeer channel. Love and beer.